Hello, all you great Backyard Farmer fans. Thank you for joining us in front of our beautiful Backyard Farmer garden as we celebrate our 65th birthday. This is a taped show, so you can't call in. However, as always, you can send us your emails to byf@unl.edu, and of course, we try to do those emails on a future show. You can also follow us during the week on all that great social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, you name it, we can do it. So we always start our show with samples, and we're going to take off our hats because, you know, they're kind of small for our big Backyard Farmer heads. Constrictive. And Jonathan has brought a sample that he promises to keep in the box, yes, or I would have had a fly swatter.
I knew that this would be one that you might not like, but I brought my new pet, Diana, the Dolomites fishing spider. So you can see her over here in the corner. She was brought to the extension office on Thursday, and the people who brought her in, of course, were quite freaked out. This is one of our largest spiders in Nebraska. If you can see her here, she's about 2.5 inches wide if you include all of her legs. And they are pretty common. The name fishing spider sort of makes people think they only live by watery areas and eat fish. And they can eat minnows and live in those spots, but we often find them in woodlands, and we can also see them in people's homes sometimes. So they're not a medical hazard. We have one reported documented case of a fishing spider bite in history, and the person got sort of an itchy red welt that burned for a little while, but it wasn't anything like what we see with brown recluses or anything like that. So just something to go out and find. They're pretty cool, and I'm happy to have a new pet.
Do we dare ask why you named her Diana?
Because goddess of the hunt. So she can hunt quite well. They're powerful predators that kind of squeeze their prey and then bite it and eat it.
Oh, what a thought. All right, and Dennis, no snakes.
No, but it starts with S and ends in T. When the animals are in your yards, sometimes you see their tracks, sometimes you see the animal. But more than likely, you're going to see the scat. So I brought some scat here. We have squirrel scat. We have your bat scat, not to be confused with mouse. So if you see it pointed on one end, very sparkly, and looking like this on your porch, it's not mice, it's bats. It's all made out of exoskeletons from Johnson's insects. And they did use this for mascara a long time ago, so, you know, if you really want to, then you can bat your eyes. And then we have rabbit. And rabbits have both brown and green. The green, they save for later, go back and eat it again. But the brown has already been through once efficiently. Very round. And then I have white-tailed deer. The white-tailed deer is rubber, so
you will hold it.
I will hold it.
You can shake his hands later.
So, and we're putting up a whole guide to the scat of the mammals of Nebraska up on our university website when you need to identify mammals. So you really can know your scat if you go to that guide, and it'll be on there and you can put it right on your phone.
And if you're going to send us a picture of scat, make sure it's in focus.
Yeah.
You have to get close enough to make sure it's in focus.
And put a little scale with it, you know, ruler or quarter or dime or a square of toilet paper. Anything that we can see the size of it will really work well.
All right, Dennis. Amy, a paintbrush?
A paintbrush. I didn't bring a plant today. I brought the paintbrush to remind everybody not to paint your trees. With all the storms we've been having, Omaha got hit again last night, Lincoln the week before, Western Nebraska, and so we're pruning up and trimming up those damaged trees. And people still have the tendency, I'm going to go ahead and paint it with paint or with tar to help the tree seal it in. And actually that's the worst thing we're going to do. So this is a reminder not to paint your trees, because if you paint your trees, all you're going to do is encourage all those nasty rots and spots to get going, and then it's going to eat out the cavity of your tree, and then it's going to fall down the next time we have a major storm event. So don't paint your trees, paint your walls instead.
Perfect. Okay, Jeff, you brought us two way cool samples today.
Yeah, I'll start off with a garden tool. So I like to have different tools for the garden. What this is a fruit picker. If you're looking it up online, it might be described as a Swedish fruit picker. And so I have several currants at home. And you could use this for a variety of things, but you just comb through the fruit and it just falls right into the container. It's a lot easier, like Kim was saying, than trying to pick it one at a time and put it in a bowl. So it works very well. Handy, I have, about 10 black currants. I did red currant last night and a white currant, so it helps with that.
And Dennis also thinks it looks like a cat litter scheme.
And it would probably help pick up the animal poop. Yeah, right, yeah. Handy. Don't use it for both things, I guess. Then I brought in oak leaf hydrangea. So it's one of our earlier flowering hydrangeas. It's just getting going here. You know, it has these nice big oak-shaped leaves, which is in itself ornamental and fun to have in the garden. Mine gets about 5 foot tall, is really where it's kind of topping out at. And then the real important thing about this one, we have a tendency to prune our oaks or prune our hydrangeas in the spring. This is one you're going to want to wait. And after bloom, if you want to go in and do some pruning, you could do that, but you would not want to prune this one in the spring. You're going to cut all the flowers off. So.
And if you're up close and personal, that one actually has a nice scent to it. Yeah. Not like linden, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, gang.
My samples had a nice scent.
No, they didn't. Not with the lids on. All right, Jonathan, you get the first picture question. This viewer sent us a picture of a little beastie she found in her garden.
Right.
Nice close-up picture. What has she found, and what does it turn into, and what does it do?
It's a white grub that we saw in the image there. So white grubs are very common. They're in everybody's lawns, except if you treat them. And they are baby scarab beetles. So some of them turn into Japanese beetles as adults. Others turn into the green June beetle, or perhaps even the masked chafer. They are all sort of C-shaped in that creamy color with an orange head capsule. If you really wanted to identify what species you have to look at the posterior tip of the abdomen, or the grub butt, if I could say that so freely on TV. And they have a series of hairs there on the rear end that can take on diagnostic shapes. For the Japanese beetle, it's shaped like a V. For the green June beetle, it's shaped like a block letter I, like they have for Iowa State. So these are the ways, they're called raster patterns, and that's how we identify our grubs. In the email that you sent, you pointed out that you hadn't seen any damage or anything. So they're just grubs. They're everywhere in the turf pretty much. You don't have to treat if you're not seeing any symptoms of damage from them over the years. So I would just go ahead and hold off and have white grubs sort of living around you.
Or birds having little meals.
And birds will have lots of food, absolutely.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. All right, Dennis, this is a Southwest Johnson County viewer. Okay. He said his cat brought him a gift. He thinks it's a mouse, but he's never seen one like it. He also says they're being invaded by wood rats or pack rats coming up from the south. Can we tell what this creature was, and what about this wood rat, pack rat thing?
Well, there's a number of pack rats or wood rats that are native to Nebraska, small numbers, usually out in the country. And this actually is a very juvenile, the best I can see without counting the teeth, a neotoma, or what we call bushy-tailed wood rat. It's very much a juvenile. Probably was taken right out of the nest. Wood rats don't cause a lot of problems. They're not moving up from Kansas. They've been here since the 70s in Johnson County. They're not large numbers, so you probably haven't seen any. There's not too much to do. I mean, your cat is not going to be causing any problems by bringing it to you, and you can just bury it and get rid of it, and there's not much to worry about with them.
Okay, awesome. Good to know. Rats are not great. Okay, Amy, this is a great picture. This is the first one we've had this year. She says it's not a pepper, and it was taken from a wild plum thicket. She thought frost damage, but she also says it's very widespread in Valley County.
Okay, it's a great picture, and if I hadn't read the email, I would have thought it was a pepper and going, what's wrong with it? What we have going on with the plums is called plum pocket, and it's a fungal disease. So as those plums are starting to develop and form, the fungus infects the fruit and then encapsulates the whole fruit, and then the fruit will continue to grow and make this pocket. and probably in the next month or so it's actually going to dry up and shrivel up, and then we'll have that nice big mass of brown to gray spores on it. But in about a month, if you would have cut it open, or even if you cut it open right now, it's absolutely hollow in the inside. There's no fruit, no sugars are being set into it. Very, very common in our wild plums. We do have a few of our native plum species that if you have it in your landscape that are susceptible, and if you do have those, we're just going to use a fungicide application, a copper-based product right at bud break to protect that plant and that fruit, and then we're good to go. So plum pocket, otherwise it's also called plum bladder, so, or bladder plum.
Okay, awesome. And does that also affect like real plums that you eat?
A few of the ones that we have, but more the native, not the true cultivar varieties.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Amy. All right, Jeff, you get this question even though there's a little rotten spot on it.
Okay.
This is a viewer who bought a red bud here in Lincoln, planted it immediately this is about 3 weeks ago now, or 4. They do live in the country in Butler County. She said the leaves develop black spots, some of them are turning yellow. They've kept it watered, it's in full sun.
Right.
So based on her description and pictures, any thoughts here?
Well, and I don't know if Amy, if you had a chance to look at the pictures, but you know, it looks like, you know, red buds will get and anthracnose, and they'll also get a leaf spot. Neither one is really anything you would treat. Not likely to be fatal to the tree. Part of it could be kind of the transplanting process is also contributing to this, and our funky weather we've had lately. So at this stage, you know, continue to do what you're doing. Make sure you're not overwatering, especially if we've had some heavy rains in your area. And then any leaves that come off or anything with some spots, I'd go ahead and pick those up. So we want to get those out of the environment so they're not recycling some of that spores and all that business. So anyway, otherwise I think you should be fine.
All right, and don't overwater.
Don't overwater,
Okay,
right.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Well, you know, for over 35 years, our beloved Gladys Jurink has volunteered to answer the phones on our phone panel. She has also brought in those lovely plants of the week. Every single week, we're trying our best. We can't hold a candle. But she has chosen to retire after all those years. We miss her greatly, but she has left us this fabulous legacy for Backyard Farmer.
How about this purple? Isn't that a neat color?
It is beautiful.
Gladys Jurink has been a master gardener for 37 or 38 years. She has been answering phones for Backyard Farmer longer than anybody else that we've had, and she is a true gardener.
You know, just listening to her talk to people, you could tell she just really loved helping people enjoy gardening.
I think it was love of the game. She loves to garden. She loves to share her knowledge, which is a beautiful piece of what so many master gardeners do in their volunteerism. And of course, that is what Backyard Farmer is all about.
Yeah, there's no other show on earth like it. It's a fun thing with people that are just starting. I just bought this house and I've never had a garden. Now what do I do?
She is committed to outreach to people and has welcomed people into her yard, and I think that that's part of what she felt with Backyard Farmer, that's why it was so important to be here every week and make sure that the program was as good as it could be from what she could contribute.
Some beauteous flowers, and of course Gladys always did us really well, and none of these are from her garden, although they probably could have been. So what do we have? She cut things out of her own garden. She brought in house plants that she overwintered in the garage. Always something really beautiful, and it was truly all Gladys. Very nice, and again, Gladys always did us proud, and we're trying our best, but I don't know that we're as good at it.
Gladys knew just about everything there was to know about gardening. And I saw it more than once where someone would bring in a sample and they would take it to the faculty panelists, and if they didn't know, they would all say, go ask Gladys.
And the answer, of course, was ask Gladys, she'll know. And of course, Gladys not only knew, but could give background about the history of that plant and where it came from and why it was important. she has a wide-ranging curiosity about that and is extremely knowledgeable, and we are really going to miss that.
Well, I don't know whether I had much influence, but I was there, and I was enjoying it and learning something every day. You know, people come up with different answers to different things, and Nebraska is different from other states, so sometimes we do things completely different.
People really appreciate something that brings both the practical level and the true experience down to what they can understand and they can do in their own home landscape.
And I think Gladys, you know, if there was a Hall of Fame for backyard farmers, she'd certainly be on there.
Gladys is simply at home with her feet up, we hope, but she is still in her own garden.
She's just a treasure back here for the rest of us. She just loved helping people and loved gardening and loved helping other people love gardening.
She certainly has earned the right to enjoy her own garden as opposed to having it perfect for all the rest of us to see. What a fitting tribute to a wonderful woman, and we do know where she lives, so we can visit on a regular basis, especially those who live close. All right, Jonathan, you get the next couple of pictures, 2 or 3. We had several viewers send us from different parts of the state. This one's from Malcolm, dwarf Alberta spruce, about 16 years old. Southwest brown spots, new growth on the tops. And then we had another viewer who sent the same sort of thing from Beatrice. So a little bit about the same age, top dyed back. She's wondering spider mites. Yeah. What do we think here?
When I look at these pictures, that would be my first diagnosis. Yeah, spruce spider mite. It's a big problem on these kinds of dwarf Alberta spruces, and they're a cool season mite. So what we're actually looking at here is the aftermath of their feeding. In the hot months of the summer, the damage that they caused in April and May and early June sort of coalesces into this bronzing that we're seeing on a lot of these leaves here. And they aren't there anymore. So if you went out and sampled for them, you probably wouldn't find too many mites, maybe a few of them still in there, but what's out there right now are their eggs. So if you really want to destroy your enemy here, you would want to think about spraying a summer oil on your trees here in these next couple of months to try and control those eggs. Or you could wait until fall in order to control the ones that emerge with an insecticidal soap. The problem with the treatment though is that your tree's not really going to recover. I was talking with Scott Evans, my coworker, and these trees, the branches that are looking really bad, they're not going to get better. So you have to think about shaping the tree or getting it pruned. Maybe have a professional come out and take a look at that. But you could also maybe take it out, possibly, because you're going to deal with these spider mites pretty much every year with these kinds of trees.
Well, and with the growth rate like that.
It's rough.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. This is a fun one, Dennis, because it's back and forth here. This is one of our viewers who loves this. We love the love in your emails. From Omaha, it says these holes have been getting larger and larger. It's a big old maple, 30 years old. And there are all this stuff, like big old wads of stuff all over the sidewalk, sawdusty but bigger than sawdust. He wonders if the hole in the tree and the stuff on the ground are related and what sort of thing caused this.
Well, yes, and what we're looking at, as Jonathan will confer, is what we call frass. That's F-R-A-S-S, from a carpenter ant. And the carpenter ant, there's always the big heads of the carpenter ant in that frass. It's kind of like when grandma dies, they throw the head out, but they eat the rest of the body. But what's happening, probably the carpenter ants are in some degree helping the tree by getting rid of that dead wood and allowing the tree to heal itself. But while they're doing that, they're also hollowing it down below. And squirrels would love to nest in that area down below. So the tree had a wound or a cut, and it started rotting, and the squirrels are wanting to use that, and the carpenter ants say, okay, we'll kind of clean it out for you and make it easier. And so what you have is two things. You have tree squirrels that are moving the frass out that was pulled apart by the carpenter ants. And in time, I would think the tree will heal itself over if the squirrels don't stop that collar. But if you look at that collar, you'll see the squirrels have been chewing that collar. And there's two reasons for that. One, it stops the tree from healing, therefore giving them a nesting site for years to come. And also that squirrel graffiti. So they're probably chewing on the collar, rubbing their chin, saying, hey, my house, you go somewhere else, you know, my crib. So squirrels are really territorial and they do that. So I don't know if you want to add anything about the carpenter ants.
Yeah, the carpenter ants, they're not killing the tree or anything. They're just taking advantage of decaying wood in there. They do have big, powerful jaw muscles that can help them to chew through lots of wood, but they're not like termites. They're not consuming that tree. You could get them treated for, but ultimately they're not really causing too much of a foul there.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, Amy, we don't get a lot of houseplant questions, which is really good because I don't do houseplants. But this is a houseplant one, and it is a Dracaena marginata. A lot of people have Dracaenas. Raised bumps on the leaves. Upper third of the plant is not affected, lower third is. Based on the pictures, what do you think this Dracaena has?
So in general, Dracaena doesn't get a lot of diseases, even in its native population in the tropics. They are very susceptible to fluoride toxicity, salt buildups, but the symptoms that we're seeing on here totally don't match up with it. There are a couple of fungal leaf spots that can occur, but most of the time, the indication of those fungal leaf spots means in the house, it's not getting enough light and it's too humid in the house. So, and I know with the change in weather, for me personally, my house has been a lot more humid than normal because you're trying to wait to turn on that AC. You probably may have already turned it on, but we may also be pulling those drapes too to keep the house cooler, and so that Dracaena isn't getting enough light. So what I would really do is try to increase the light, reduce the humidity as best as we can, and just wait and see how it works. I wouldn't recommend any treatment on the Dracaena at this point in time, especially since it's a house plant. I'm not a big fan of fungicide applications in the house. So.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Amy. Okay, Jeff, this is a viewer who moved to Wyoming, or from Wyoming to Lincoln. Welcome. We love you. But they bought a house with a whole bunch of burning bushes, 16 in fact, and they're discovering that some of them look great, and they look great early in the season, and some turn good colors, but then they don't. Some of them don't. Right. So based on what you saw in this one, is this Amy's? Is this environmental?
Well, you know, I tell you, we've had this sort of experience on campus in a few places. Burning bush are pretty tolerant of a lot of soil conditions, which is nice. However, they're not very tolerant of wet soils. And you know, they'll kind of do their thing and stay there, but you can tell that they're suffering. We'll see some of this chlorosis, some of this off-coloring of the leaves. So that's, to me, that's telling me that maybe early on in the year, the soils are dry enough. We get some of these heavy wet rains like we've had here recently in Lincoln. The soils get saturated, and then the roots kind of start suffering, and you have this periodic thing. So while they're continuing to do okay now, and I know some are suffering, and maybe they'll still be there in a couple of years, you'll notice increased dieback. So my solution would be to make sure that we're not adding any irrigation to the site, making sure that we're not over mulching those plants as well, and seeing if we can help dry that out a little bit. Fertility then may be something that we'd want to think again next spring. Seeing about fertilizing that with a very balanced, I would use an organic fertilizer or something like that, just to help add a little bit more energy to the plants.
Awesome, excellent. So good job on all of these questions. And we goofed a little bit last week on our garden segment. We kind of got ahead of ourselves. So this week we're going to talk about pulling those weeds or eating those weeds. Here's Nebraska Extension educator Terry James to show us which ones you do what with.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're looking at some edible weeds. Well, they're not really actually weeds. These are actually grown to be edible. We have two different kind of cool things. We have Italian dandelion. This thing hasn't produced any flowers yet. We're waiting to see what will happen once we get some more weather. But look at the really cool leaves. A little peppery will work great in a salad. And then we have purslane. This isn't the creeping one that you always find that everybody's pulling out of the yard, which is also edible, but this is an upright one. We're making sure that we don't let it go to flower and to seed, and this is also great to put in those salads. And not only are these plants edible, but look at the great structure and texture that these have that add to the design element in our backyard farmer garden. So stop by our backyard farmer garden and check out our weeds that are edible this week in the garden.
So you can pull them, you can dress them, you can chomp on them. I will tell you the dandelion is a really acquired taste, and ours got way too big to be any good to eat. So, but that purslane is pretty tasty. Cool. So, all right, Jonathan, we have a question from our audience. Thank you, audience. Timely.
Okay.
When is a good time this year to treat your ash trees if they can be treated, and what can be done?
So if you want your tree to be treated, you should start treating now. If you're going to get it injected, the injection season is really right now in June up until probably the midpoint of July, and then again in the fall for some of the chemicals. If you're getting a treatment of imamectin benzoate, which is often sold as Triage or Boxer and other trade names like that, that chemical can be applied anytime when there are green leaves on the tree. So right now would be a great time to contact a certified arborist and try and get scheduled so you can get that treatment done.
Awesome, excellent. And so what is the window right now for how close to where? Lincoln.
Yeah. So in Lincoln, it's in Greenwood, so that's within 15 miles, I think, right? Yeah, and then in Omaha, we have two confirmed locations, one in Middletown and then one out on the edge by Zorinsky Lake. So pretty much all of Douglas County, most of Sarpy County are within the treatment consideration zone. Lincoln and some of the surrounding areas are as well. But if you're in the middle part of the state or out west, not something that's not really something that needs to be treated for quite yet.
All right, excellent. Okay, Dennis, this is a viewer who said she used Repelzol and sort of sprayed her old vegetable garden, including little tomatoes that she had just planted like 6 inches. So she sprayed Repelzol, and then now she's wondering, oops, can she eat the tomatoes? What does the Repelzol do? So you can take either spin on that.
Well, a couple things. One, most of the repellents don't work 100% efficiently in keeping the animals off that are eating the plants. You gotta remember, a repellent only works if there's an alternative. To survive is more important than tasting something that doesn't taste well. The other thing, I'm not 100% certain what the ingredients is. If most of those repellents are just Caspin, which is hot sauce. In that case, if you don't mind hot sauce, you won't mind the plant. And most of that can be washed off. So I would definitely check with the manufacturer and the label of your product before you do eat that. But most of the time, no matter what it is, it's going to change the taste of the fruit to some degree.
And does that stuff work, Repelzol?
No, like I'm saying, it has maybe 25% repellency because animals just, if they want to eat it, they're going to eat it. If the only time it has a little bit of effect, there's a lot of alternatives. Like you sprayed every other one, then they'll eat the other ones. So, you know, to survive and to feed is much more important than taste when it comes for most animals. So it's not going to work.
All right. Okay. Amy, we are already getting questions about spots on ornamental pears. A lot of questions. So what to do?
Take your pick on what disease it is.
Yeah.
It could be scab. We have different types of rust. At this point in time in the year, there isn't anything we can really do. The application to prevent those is really earlier in the season as the plants are starting to leaf out. So at this point in time, there isn't really anything we can do.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Amy. Okay, so you get a viewer question from our audience. Thank you, audience. Jeff is in the Hort chair, but Jeff answers turf questions.
Oh, cool.
Oh. So the question is, how low should you go on your lawn during this hot season? And if it's too low, what happens to the turf?
Well, how low should you go? Typically, we advise folks to mow in the 3 to 4 inch range. And based on the amount of moisture we've had, maybe your personal frequency of mowing, and certainly the temperatures would kind of depend on that. If you're someone that, like me, I might mow the yard a couple times a week, I'll be in 3.5 inches. If you're someone that maybe it's just once a week, you might want to look at 4. So it just kind of depends on your own personal situation and your equipment. If we get too low, what we do is we actually increase the amount of potential for weeds that we have. We increase the amount of stress that we have on the grass plants. In my experience, we make them less drought resistant, less thrifty. The turf kind of thins out over time. So keep that mower up at that 3.5 to 4 inches. I personally find that I have to fertilize less. I haven't applied pre-emergent in my lawn now for 5 years. Whatever little crabgrass I get, I can just pop out with a soil knife. So it really is, from a maintenance standpoint, certainly on campus, we mow at 3.5 to 4 inches everywhere. So
even if you have to do it every 24 hours?
Even if we have to do it multiple times, yeah. Right.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And Jeff, these are out of our backyard farmer garden.
Wow, they're beautiful. So you're doing a pretty good job, Kim.
Master gardeners are doing
a great job then. So the 2 plants we have here, both very resistant to heat, good full sun summer plants. The first one we'll look at is hot papaya coneflower. So it's a very, very hardy plant. Kim was telling me it's one of the newer hybrids, done very well for them. The next one is this Route 66 coreopsis. Again, I kind of like the red centers on these, so a little different than our typical moonbeam. Has still that thread leaf foliage, which is kind of nice. And again, so you have a hot place, a dry place, you know, that held strip, the verge there out by the curb. This might be 2 good choices for you to add some color to your house.
Mm-hmm. Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, if you like those hot colors, doesn't get a whole lot hotter than that.
Yeah, they're really fun colors.
Fun colors. All right, Jonathan, first picture question, or third one actually. This is a Burt County viewer. And she says she found these beetles on a goldenrod leaf. She does know they're not emerald ash borers.
Good, good.
But she does wonder what they are.
Well, what we're looking at here is the dogbane leaf beetle. And I was happy to receive this picture because I get to talk about a beautiful insect as part of the wondrous pageantry of nature. I don't have to talk about how to destroy it. So it's not really a pest, it's just a beautiful iridescent green insect that lives on dogbane very frequently in a few other plants. Probably wasn't feeding on the goldenrod, may have been having a romantic interlude there on the goldenrod together, but they're just really beautiful green. If you catch them at a different light, they can take on a reddish color as well. So just a really cool insect to see.
Awesome. And you know, so many of those beetles are green.
Yeah, it does get confused with the EAB a lot because of its color.
So the second one is also, she found this guy, and what is it?
That is the long-necked seed bug. So it's a seed bug, meaning it has a needle-like mouthpart on the front to feed on seeds with. It's related to things like cicadas and aphids because of that needle-like mouthpart. Not a pest unless you're a strawberry farmer, and so we don't really need to talk about control with it either. It does help to control some weeds actually in certain scenarios. So just another good bug out there in the world.
And as always, you know, you bug guys name something, something, something bug.
Right, right.
Bug.
Right, it's a true bug though. So.
Well, there you go. All right. Okay, Dennis, you have a whole bunch of pictures here that are related.
Okay.
Midtown Omaha viewer has a sunset maple. Something's been chewing off the bark. The second one is a Grand Island viewer, damage to the bark of the Japanese maple, and she does say squirrels keep running up and down because there's a feeder close. And then the third one is, what in the world? Something has taken a liking to eating the pure redwood top off their pergola.
Okay, well, all this is caused by the same species, the fox squirrel. You have a lot of the bark chewing is to lick and get moisture and micronutrients and sugars and starch from underneath the bark and the canyon. So just having food there is not going to stop them, or having water there is not going to stop them. They particularly like that tree, and they want that sugar and that starch. So most of that is stripping by tree squirrels, which you would have to live trap and remove. If you live trap them and squirt them with water, you may haze them and they won't come back. It's okay to haze squirrels just a little bit. And then the other part is what they're doing on that deck. There must be a squirrel that has a bird feeder it likes in that area, or a nest in a tree, and that squirrel is doing the graffiti. He's chipping it every morning and rubbing his chin, so he's not getting any food or nutrients out of that deck. But we have it on some of the buildings here on campus where it gets massive over time, because every morning that male squirrel is going over there, chewing a little bit, dropping it, and rubbing its chin. Then after a month, you're going to get a lot of different things to cause problems there.
Okay, darn squirrels anyway.
Yeah.
All right, Amy, this is a viewer, I think Boys Town area. She has, all she said is a problem with a red oak, and she sent us a couple of pictures of, yeah, she's got a problem with this red oak.
She does have a real problem. The one piece of information I would really like to know is how long this tree has been planted. This time of year, our oaks shouldn't be turning that beautiful orange or yellow color. This is an indication that this tree is extremely stressed, and the likelihood of it surviving is probably very, very slim. Why is it dying? Why is it stressed? Knowing how long it's been planted would help. How wet has the roots been? And typically I would probably look at a root problem to begin with. Do we already have girdling roots? And we didn't spread the roots out correctly when we're planting? Is our planting depth too deep so we don't have those nice root flares on the top? Or you do have a nice mulch ring around it. I would also want to take a closer look at that trunk to make sure that we haven't damaged it and allowed for a canker development to occur. So at this point in time, with it changing colors, it's not going to have the energy resource to leaf back out next year. So this is the time to start driving around. If you want to replace it with another oak this fall, that would be perfectly fine. Or start looking at your neighborhood and seeing what other trees people have and determine if you want one of those new trees into your landscape this fall.
All right, thank you, Amy. All right, so this is a bald cypress question for you, Jeff,
Okay.
A West Omaha viewer. A couple of issues, one of them was spider mites, and you've already talked about that, Jonathan, but holes in the tree, she seems to be very concerned about the long-term health of this particular tree, and whether a bald cypress with holes is something we want to keep in the landscape.
Sure. Well, a couple things. You know, it's from the picture, it indicates that the tree doesn't have any potential targets. So if it was next to the house or next to a sidewalk or driveway or something like that, that would concern me about if it was going to fail, that it might hit somebody or hit something. So that to me doesn't look like an issue. I would say with bald cypress, because of the way the trunk forms, it does kind of create some folds. It's not uniform necessarily. So I think of our bald cypress that we have on campus, they're not something like you might see with a red oak or a maple that has a very uniform, relatively round trunk. They're kind of oblong and odd shaped and that sort of thing. So from that standpoint, I don't know if I would have a lot of serious concern. You know, you could look in there, I see you have your tape measure in there. I think I'd stick my finger in there and see if it's, you know, if you could pull some rotting wood out or something like that, or if it feels like there's a cavity in there, then you could look at something like that. But at this stage, I don't know if I'd really worry about it. I think the tree looks pretty healthy to me. Okay. And it might be just an old branch scar sort of thing that has kind of created that. So enjoy the tree while you can, I think.
Thanks, Jeff. And you know, most of us are old enough to be able to use the word gnarly on that tree. Gnarly, yeah. Not you, Jonathan, maybe, but. All righty. So you may live next door to somebody who has perfect turf because they have that keep off the lawn sign on their turf, which is maybe not a very positive thing, but here's Rock Gassois to talk about what you can actually do from a positive standpoint in those high traffic turf areas.
We're going to talk about traffic on turf and how stressful that can be to that grass that you're trying to grow in your yard or in a park or in a system. But what better facility to do this at than the facilities for Husker football? We've been working with the Husker football program for over 25 years, helping them decide the best grasses and some of the best things they can do. Now, of course, you can have artificial turf, and that's really good for traffic stress, but in your yard, you're not going to have artificial turf. So what do you do in your home rather than the football facility, to make sure that your turf grass can withstand the day-to-day wear and tear of children, pets, and other traffic, the lawnmower. And there are a couple of things that you need to know, some key things that you need to be aware of. First and foremost, when you're mowing your yard, consider altering the patterns. Don't always go in the same track time and time again. You can see that in a lot of neighborhood lawns where you can see the track where the mower has gone consistently over the same path time and time again. So first and foremost, rotate the pattern of your mower. 2, mow higher. If you mow higher, turf grass traffic staff is increased and you don't get some of the patterning that you would get even if you don't rotate your mower. Another thing you might want to consider is besides raising your mowing height, is making sure you don't mow when it's wet. That traffic will even be further aggravated by that sort of stress. One other thing, or one of the other many things to be aware of, is that pets and other things in the yard often are not compatible. If you have a large dog and it's running around the yard, it's going to defecate, it's going to urinate, and that's going to cause some problems, along with just they tend to follow the same path time and time again. We would recommend a dog run or something else, especially with a large dog. If you have small dogs, even then, make sure that they go to a different part of the yard to relieve themselves, because there really is no magic trick unless you keep them from going to the same place time and time again. And pets are what we call habitual. They will want to go to the same spot time and time again. What about turf grass species? What kind of species might you want in your yard? Turf grass tall fescue is extremely wear tolerant, but it doesn't recover very well. Kentucky bluegrass, on the other hand, doesn't have great wear tolerance, but it has great recuperative potential. Probably the best thing for lawns in these days is that you can get blends, which is a mixture of 2 turf grass species, of turf grass tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass, which ultimately results in both a quick traffic stress recovery as well as recuperative potential. The rhizomes of the bluegrass help out, the fescue wear tolerance helps on the front end. Now, some of the new turf type tall fescues are historically bunch grasses, but some of the new lateral spreaders, they're not Kentucky bluegrass, but they do have the potential to spread a little bit. So let's go with the lateral spreading or rhizomatous tall fescues. Throw in a little bit of bluegrass to bind it all together, and you're going to have the perfect species choice for your lawn.
So probably nobody knows turf like Rock Gassois, and if you keep those tips in mind, probably a better looking turf. And by the way, that was one of my dogs, and yes, he does do that to my turf. All right, you get question 4. So this picture, this particular viewer in Omaha found a floater in his pond, and above his pond are black walnuts. Okay. So he found this monster, like 4-inch long dead floating thing.
Yes.
What is it?
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for including a scale in your image. Yes. I was really weirded out to see a 4-inch long caterpillar that looked like this. We would normally expect a 4-incher to be something like a Saturniid or silk moth larva, but what we can tell from this image is that this is most likely an underwing caterpillar. This is the one that I really wrestled with this week. Jim Kalish and I took a look at it, and Steve Spomer. And we think that it's an underwing caterpillar. And we think that because of the shape of its body and some of its prolegs. As adults, their top wings, the ones that would be up here, are sort of gray and mottled, and then the ones that are underneath have bright red or orange stripes. We think this one may be the betrothed underwing that was blown into your pool. So look that up. Maybe you can see some other caterpillars are hanging out and around your property, but not a pest, not something you really need to worry about.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. We like to stump. All right, Dennis, this is actually someone who moved here from Arkansas, which is great, love it here. But a wascally wabbit has been chewing off their June berries, and the same person, then first she wondered why, and then the second was she sent us a picture of what might work to take care of the wascally wabbits. So the first one is the Juneberry, the second one is...
Oh, it's a beautiful bull snake.
Yes.
It's our most common snake in the state. Also grows easily by over 2 foot. And guess what? They carry no germs and viruses transmitted to us. And their teeth are only 1/16 of an inch because they constrict their prey. So they're great to have, and they love baby bunnies. They'll clean those baby bunnies right up. So you have your perfect biological control right at hand. So I would just enhance it and not worry about it. If you're still having problems with rabbits eating the roses, you would have to fence around the roses, probably 2 foot up and about only 4 inches in the ground with 1/2 inch type mesh fencing.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Dennis. All right, Amy, this is, we don't know where he's from, but he could be from anywhere with this question. Zucchini is producing little zucchinis. They're rotting on the vine.
So it's actually a situation that we have multiple things going on. The reason why it's rotting at the end is most likely from blossom end rot. And blossom end rot can be due from infrequent watering. Jeff and I were talking about it beforehand, because in my area, we're about 3 to 4 weeks behind Lincoln right now just because of the cool weather. And so I wasn't even thinking about getting fruit yet. But in the Lincoln and the southeast portion, the south central part of the state, we've been getting some rains, and we're getting 3-4 inches at a time, and then it's a week to 2 weeks before we get another rain. And so things are getting really, really dry. And so we throw that water back on and then we overwater. The other trick to keep in mind where the zucchini could be a little small also is those temperature fluctuations that we had about 2-3 weeks ago could definitely be affecting our pollinators, and we maybe just don't have real good pollination occurring on those cucurbits at this point in time. So best thing to do, pick it off, remove it, and just wait. You'll be having zucchini coming out of your ear within a couple weeks.
All right, thank you, Amy. Okay, Jeff, this is a very loyal Omaha viewer who has sent us pictures of a couple of trees that are memorials planted at his church. A ginkgo that snapped and then resprouted is the first one, and then he has a yellowwood, and it looks like there might even be a catalpa or something in there too. Died to the ground, new tree came up from the base. Prognosis on either one of those?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, and I think Sarah had a similar kind of question with kind of a side bud developing what looks like might be a new trunk or a new tree. You know, in both cases, unfortunately, we need to replace these plants. They're not in great shape, so I think it's an easy justification to go ahead and remove those. And ginkgo and what was the other one? Yellowwood?
Yellowwood.
Yellowwood are both really good choices, and both interesting plants. So there's no problem with the selections themselves. I think just circumstances created an unfortunate event for you. So go ahead and replace those trees. There's no point in delaying the inevitable with either one. So.
All right, yeah, and even though they're expensive, it's not worth the gamble.
Right.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, we have a couple of announcements of fun things in the gardening world going on this week, and we don't have them all because if you don't send them, we can't tell you. But we have the River Cities Cactus and Succulent Society sale, and that is Friday, June 23rd. In Papillion, number on the screen. The second one, of course, is our Produce from the Heart, donation of the extra produce right here in the Backyard Farmer Garden. That is a program that is really going well. We're very excited to be involved with that. So good stuff in the gardening world. All righty. And I think still Jazz in June going on, maybe?
Jazz in June, and actually that week, I believe, is the Backyard Farmer
June
crew.
27th.
Yes,
that's right. We will be live yet again at Love Library. I forgot about that one.
Sheldon, meet on the east side of Sheldon Museum, and we'll go on a lovely hour-long tour with some of the panelists.
Right. Should be outrageous.
Yes.
Okay, so question for you, Jonathan. This is a viewer who wonders whether insecticides have a shelf life, and if you use them after like a long time, can they harm plants?
Yes. The insecticides absolutely have a shelf life. It's on there, it's printed on the label, and you should not use products after their shelf life has expired because you are probably not going to get efficacious control of your pest, or of your weed, of your fungus, whatever it is that you're trying to control. And it's just sort of a waste of money and time. There are lots of other ingredients in insecticides and other pesticides that are inert, and they can cause harm to plants if they go bad as well. So yeah, dispose of those properly, read the label, find a local disposal organization like Under the Sink is in some communities. They can help to dispose of your products for you.
All right, excellent. And a little more dangerous than that Born Again date on beer cans.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Dennis, this is really fun. We had a couple of pictures that we're not sure what was living under the porch. Well, she wrote back and she said it was a skunk family. Oh, mama and 4 babies. And she did follow your neb guide for skunk control, and it worked.
Good.
But then the question really is, will they come back?
Chances are no. She probably was using that as, so to speak, a nursery or a place to put the babies, but once you disturb her enough and block it off, she will find another location that's more suitable. So skunks don't have as much fidelity to keep going back to the same place every year. So I would say once you block it off, you're fine.
All right, excellent. She's probably going to be glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, we've had a couple of pictures this season about slime mold, and we continue to get questions about how do you control it and how do you keep it from coming back?
With slime mold, there really isn't anything we can do for it. Slime mold is actually a good guy if you think about it. So we're going to find slime mold in our mulches, in our landscape beds, and what the slime mold is actually doing is breaking down that mulch and that organic matter into nitrogen for the plants. So they're good guys. We want them there. So we're never going to recommend anything to destroy them. The best way to handle them is if you see them, get the hose out, strong jet a stream of water, wash it right off, and you're good to go with your slime molds and all those other kind of gross looking slime molds that can be found in your landscape.
And if it's a really cool color, send us a picture. We have the yellow one.
There are some wonderful vibrant color ones. There are blues, there's purples. I haven't seen a red yet, but there's a lot of colors out there that are really neat.
All right, thanks, Amy. Okay, from our audience, Jeff, and I know you can answer this one because we talked about it before we went on air here. So where do you get milkweed seeds, and how do you grow them successfully?
Well, my lovely wife has a way of somehow finding them, and they end up in our landscape. So we have a colony of milkweed right now. You know, it's this time of year, they're just starting to flower. The common milkweed is right now. And so you may actually start seeing those. And if you see those on the side of the road, once those pods develop, if you really want to add that, I would say go ahead and collect some of those and bring those home, and you can plant those in your own home landscape. That'd be the simplest way. There are, you know, there's some, obviously some ornamentals, some swamp milkweeds, and some others that are good choices, and you may enjoy those as well. The downside with the common milkweed is it tends to be kind of rhizomatous and spread, and you know, I'm trying to keep ours to a low roar right now, so it's not getting too far, but it's ending up in the lawn and one underneath the sidewalk and that sort of thing. So expect once you get them established that you might have a friend for a long time. So
all right, as do we in the Backyard Farmer
Yeah.
Garden. All right, Jonathan, we have a little bit of time left.
Okay.
How do you get rid of grasshoppers? A plague last year ate half the garden, and they're seeing the baby ones right now.
I would go ahead and try and get a carbaryl based brand bait out. The little grasshoppers will eat that and it will take care of them.
All right, so end of discussion on that
It's
one.
a cereal mixed with the 7 insecticide that a lot of us purchase, and they nibble it up and they pass away after that.
Pass away. Pass away.
Sounds peaceful.
Peaceful. All right, Dennis, right quick.
Yep.
20 seconds or less. So is there a way to attract owls to live in an urban neighborhood?
It's somewhat difficult. They'll find it if everything's there. So having things there, like, it's about the best you can do. Having rodents around and having a place where they can hide, and having no cats.
No cats makes a big
No outdoor
difference.
cats.
No cats, all right.